Well, Bleacher Report, who I love and respect, is Steve. I just talked to him in the hallway. He's going to jump in on this too. But I love when things really get ratcheted up. And the first thing we always get when football season is going to start is these lists. Top list of all time this, top list of all time that. And Bleacher Report put out its top 30 all-time college football players. And I didn't have a problem with most of the names on the list. I just had a major problem with where a lot of these guys were slotted. And if Martin, would you like me to just dive right in and just dig right into it, baby?
Do your best Michael Phelps impression.
All right. Oh, 8 gold medals. Here we go. Hey, number one, I totally agree with. It's Herschel Walker. I don't have a problem with Herschel Walker being number one. I'm old enough to remember where Herschel Walker was just tearing through the SEC and tearing through the nation as a running back. Every Saturday, you were just waiting for the Herschel Walker highlight because he was a man among boys. The way he ran the football, the way he got Georgia to their last national championship before Kirby Smart came in and won the national championship. At number two, I hated to see this, but I understand it. They had R.G. Griffin, number two, the famed Ohio State running back, but he won 2 Heismans. He won back-to-back Heismans. He's the only guy in the history of college football over 100 years to win 2 Heisman. And then the list starts to get real jargon out. And I just got some notes here that I jotted down. Well, not some, a bunch of notes I jotted down. The first one that popped out of my eye was Tim Tebow at number 9.
I don't think I can name 9 football players better than Tim Tebow.
Yeah, you don't?
I don't.
Wow, okay. I just thought that was a little too high for Tim Tebow. When I see guys like O.J. Simpson at 16, Ricky Williams at 17, the biggest gripe I have with the list is Charles Woodson at 25. Now, I know most of you are going to be like, okay, here goes VJ on his Michigan rant. Yeah, listen, this ain't got nothing to do with that. This is the simple fact that since the man walked onto campus at Michigan, he was touted to be the next great college football player. If you guys don't know his history, Fremont, Ohio, he was Mr. Football in high school his junior and his senior year. Gets recruited to Michigan. The only defensive player to win the Heisman. Not only does he win the Heisman, wins the national championship. Not only does he win the national championship, in that season for the Heisman, you guys remember who he beat out? He beat out a gentleman by the name of Peyton Manning, who thought he had it sold up. The last 4 that were there, the 4 finalists were Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf. We know Ryan Leaf's story. Had a great year with Michael Black as running back, and he had those receivers at Washington State, and they had a Cinderella year and went to the Rose Bowl and lost to Charles Woodson. And then also Randy Moss was also a finalist there. Marshall, I believe, went 13-0. Quarterback was Chad Pennington. Randy Moss, put up some great numbers that year. But then you see a guy like Ron Dane. Ron Dane is voted over Charles Woodson. Bo Jackson at number 19. I also thought Tony Dorsett was a little low at 18. And also, too, where's Desmond Howard? How is Desmond Howard not in the top 30? Played special teams, played receiver, won a Heisman, had the most prolific college football punt return up until that time in history, with the most prolific call by, rest in peace, Mr. Keith Jackson, hello, Heisman. And he hits the Heisman in the end zone against Ohio State. Quick tidbit for you. If you guys remember, his was a 78-yard punt return, I believe. Charles Woodson had an 82-yard punt return. Same game, same hash mark, up the same sideline as Desmond Howard. I mean, it writes itself, right? Some other notes that I have here. Randy Moss, I don't mind Randy Moss on the list. But then I think about, okay, he had one good year at Marshall. And I just went through history and just looked at some other guys. How is Larry Fitzgerald behind Randy Moss, not on the list? Even Amari Cooper. He had more yards that one season. Randy Moss had 1,647. Amari Cooper had 1,727. And then also Devontae Smith, 1,856, won the Natty and won the national championship, and won the Heisman. So those are just some of the quick notes that looking at this list. Also, too, offensive lineman. Orlando Pace, I got no problem. He was a monster. But where's Anthony Munoz out of USC on this list? You got one lineman. You got one representative from Michigan. And my last one, I like Prime. I love Coach Prime. I'm all Colorado. I'm pulling for him. I loved him all through his career. But he's 12. Charles Woodson's 25. That's a 13-spot difference. I had a major problem with that. Deion was the guy. But Charles Woodson did it on both sides of the ball. And then once again, Charles Woodson walked away with the Heisman. So those were just some of the quick notes that I went through. Last one, Colt McCoy made this list. How the hell Colt McCoy make this list over Charlie Ward? Charlie Ward won a national championship and won a Heisman. It was just as prolific as a quarterback before you could just throw the ball every down as Colt McCoy was. So those are some of my gripes also about this list in the top 30.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't care too much about somebody else's list, but Tim Tebow was a 2-time national champion, won the Heisman.
Yep.
Won just about every single quarterback award you can win, 2-time offensive SEC player of the year, 3-time first team all SEC. Like, Tim Tebow is one of the most decorated college football players that have ever graced the gridiron. But you know what? Honestly, I'd see this list and I know maybe I'm only 30. I'll be 35 in almost a month now, so I'm a little younger, I guess, when you're considering some of these names that are on this list. But I don't think I've ever seen a better football player in his prime than Cam Newton. And he did it at Auburn, and he was all by himself. No one else on that offense went to the NFL, and only one other player on the defense, mind you, went to the NFL. So that goes to show you.
Was that the D tackle from?
It was Nick Fairley.
That went to Detroit. Yeah, went to the Lions. You're right. Yeah,
but that was it. That was the list of professional players from Tim Tebow. I mean, from Cam Newton's Auburn year, where he just, dominated college football. So, yeah, those would be the only two that ultimately, you know what you should have done? You see a list like this. Instead of making notes, make your own list.
Hold on. See, I'm telling you, you just went and ruined the surprise. You guys know how I get down. When lists come out, when I get challenged with them, I go make my own.
Well,
so this week,
let's be clear, nobody challenged you.
That's how I took it.
You saw
Michael
it
Jordan style. I took it personally.
Okay.
I took it personally from Bleacher Report, like they was coming at me. That's how I was like, who you? First of all, who you think you're talking to? That's who you think you're talking to. This is a big vanilla funny. This is a big vanilla Madden right here, baby. Don't put no list out if y'all ain't running by me. Another name too. Tommy Frazier's on this list, so I don't have a problem with it. Number 3. But people forget, and I know his off-the-field stuff, and R.I.P., Lord rest his soul also, too. A lot of trouble stuff after college. But Lawrence Phillips was the running back in that offense that made that power I option, triple option go. Tommy Frazier was amazing. But you can't have him at 3, and then Lawrence Phillips can't crack. I'm going to put Lawrence Phillips over Ron Dane. I know Ron Dane had the yards, and at one point was pushing for the all-time leader rusher. I think he was the all-time leader rusher at one. That's fine. But when you look at what Lawrence Phillips did, the way he ran in the competition he ran against, I would argue the Big 8/Big 12 was a little better than the Big 10 back then as far as some of the players that they put out. You're absolutely right about Cam Newton. Lawrence Taylor also was another guy left out of the top 30. He was the ACC 1980 Player of the Year as a defender, not Defensive Player of the Year. He was the ACC's Player of the Year. Steve, you sir, you've probably forgotten more college football than I know. I definitely wanted to bring you in on this because we got talking about LaDainian and Garrison Hurst and Marshall Faulk. Marshall Faulk's another guy off this list. I'm not sure if you've seen the list. I probably should have texted to you, but just your thoughts on some of my comments about some of the guys, and then maybe guys you can think about. Hey, VJ, where's this guy?
I'm glad the Cam Newton name was brought up. I would put that in a separate list of one-year wonders because that was a ridiculously great year. Like Joe Burrow's last year was ridiculously great. But he didn't approach that before in his college career.
That's the problem with Cam. He didn't have the longevity.
Yeah, he had 1 year, literally 1 year. And Carson Palmer was a USC quarterback for 4 or 5 years and did nothing like his final year, the Heisman year, in all his USC years until he finally broke through and beat Notre Dame and won the Heisman and all of that. Matt Leinart had double the career that Carson Palmer had as far as productivity. And you talk about Tommy Frazier and winning quarterbacks, throw Matt Leinart on that list as well. When we talked about college football on a prior show, I mentioned in my lifetime, the 2 running backs I saw where I actually thought this is unfair that they're on the field is Herschel Walker and Marshall Faulk. Marshall Faulk, his freshman year, averaged 7 yards a carry for the entire season.
Crazy.
He had a non-conference game. Again, he's just starting his career, a guy that was recruited as a defensive back. He went to San Diego State because they were going to let him play running back, and he wound up with Sean Payton as his assistant coach at San Diego State. And so in his first month as a college football player, he had a game with 386 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns. Marshall Faulk was ridiculously good. And for running backs, I can't vouch for Jim Brown or Red Grange, but they're probably on most people's list.
Right.
I would throw Bo Jackson, Earl Campbell certainly, and Barry Sanders is as close to the Marshall Faulk, Herschel Walker thing about being unfair And ironically, Barry Sanders' career finished on Marshall Falks Field in the Holiday Bowl in San Diego.
Yeah, not only that, Barry Sanders, 2,000 yards also in college. He's at number 5. So I like where they have Barry. And kids today, and a lot of people, not just kids, there's a lot of adults.
He had 300-yard, multiple 300-yard rushing games in the same season, Barry Sanders.
Barry was just a different guy. And remember, he was backing up Thurman Thomas.
That's right.
When he first got to Oklahoma State. So it wasn't just handed to him. There was a Hall of Famer.
He was special teams. He was still getting on the field, but yeah, absolutely.
Another running back, Reggie Bush, not in the top 30. Like I said, I get Ron Dane. There's Mike Rozier. I felt like they were USC'd out because they have Marcus Allen at 8 and they have OJ at 16. And I figured they said, okay, well, we got to push Reggie. Are you kidding? Are you ready? Are you kidding me? Put the tape on. You talk about a guy you give the ball to, and you literally think, it's not hyperbole, it's not exaggeration. You literally think he's going to score almost every single time he touches the football. You didn't think that about Ron Dane.
However, as far as O.J. Simpson, you could equal the spectacular. The greatest run in the history of college football in the state of California was O.J. against UCLA back in the 1960s. Tony Dorsett had a really good career, not just a Heisman, a good career with Pitt before he ever made it to the Dallas Cowboys. Billy Sims, we see him at the Heisman ceremony all the time, had a good career, not just a year or two with Oklahoma.
Yeah, with Dorsett, the 3 guys I just think are ranked too low are O.J., Ricky Williams, and Dorsett. Dorsett and Ricky Williams. Remember, Ricky Williams breaks Dorsett record if I'm not mistaken. Correct? When Ricky Williams broke the all-time lead in rusher, wasn't Tony Dorsett at the game against Texas A&M? Ricky broke the tackle up the middle. And
also, when you talk records, keep in mind, like the Ron Dane record, for the longest time, college football, for some unknown reason, didn't count the bowl stats on your career stats.
You're right.
It's kind of like how the NBA is not counting playing games. Like, I'm sorry, did that game not exist? You're not recording the statistics of a game that we all watch. We know what happened. You're not going to, I don't know, figure it out. Get a little uniform here.
Yeah. Bo Jackson at 19 was just ridiculous to me. So to respond to Martin, I thought about this morning. I said, VJ, you got to come up with your own list. So next week, I will show up with my top 30, and we can toss around a week after next or whatever. But this list, I thought, it got me excited. It got the juices flowing. It's like, okay, yeah, it's college football season. It's NFL season. As Martin mentioned, rookies are reporting. It's real now. I haven't watched the Liquor Summer League. I'm just out. I'm out on Bronny. I'm out on everything. If it's not football right now, we got the Olympics, and Euro Cup finishes up tomorrow. Going to get a chance to watch España take on England for the championship there, and then the Copa Cup. But after that, of course, I'll dive headfirst into the Olympics. But then after, it's football. It's football from here. The Tebow one, Martin, is the one. You can, like you said, you can name off, the accolades. That's fine. But those teams were loaded. You talk about loaded. And speaking of Cam Newton, remember, Cam Newton was going to be the replacement for Tim Tebow. Cam Newton was going to be the guy that was going to, take the place of him, got in his troubles there, and then got sent on to Blaine College, which he went 11-0, won the Heisman for junior co, and then the national championship before going to Auburn.